Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for our Lunch and Learn. Today, it's March 16th, 2021, and we have Jennifer Richards here from Safety Matters Training Institute. She's going to be talking to us about falls and being arrested when you fall and how to get the person down safely. And we have a great handout afterwards, which I will email to all of our participants. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer so she can give us some great information. It's all yours, Jennifer.
Thank you, Tracy. So good afternoon, everybody. This is Jennifer with Safety Matters. I've done a Lunch and Learn a couple, 3 months in a row now, and then Aaron did a couple on fall arrest and restraint earlier in the year. I'm the owner of Safety Matters. We're a third-party safety consulting firm. We do lots of different trainings, site inspections, assistance with accident investigations, assistance with L&I issues. We did some webinars on competent person and how to deal with an L&I visit and that sort of thing a couple months ago. And when Tracy reached out to me for this month's Lunch and Learn, I thought, you know what, I'm going to share something that happened last week. So as I mentioned, we do accident investigations, which is the least favorite part of our job. But last week I got a call from a general contractor. My client was the GC, not the roofing subcontractor. And the GC called because they were concerned because a roofer had fallen. It was a situation where the personal fall arrest system, the full body harness, lanyard, anchor point, everything worked, and the worker did not hit the ground. So that's the good news. But the bad news is, they were not bad news, I shouldn't say that, but it seemed like everybody was kind of confused. Like, what do we do next? Does the worker actually said that he doesn't think he was injured, and he just wanted to go back to work. And I said, no. Are you able to self-rescue? And they said yes, they were able to self-rescue. They had an extension ladder that was long enough to reach the fallen worker, and he was able to literally untie and climb down the ladder. But he insisted that he was fine and he just wanted to go back to work. Well, that got me looking into the codes. And honestly, the Washington Administrative Code for rescue the fallen worker is very brief. It does not go beyond anything other than you have to have some sort of a rescue plan. So in my years of reviewing accident prevention plans and site-specific fall protection plans, I've experienced things like the rescue plan is call 911. And it can't just be call 911. You have to go beyond that. And I think we're all pretty aware of that and knowledgeable that calling 911 is not a rescue plan. And so what are some good rescue plans? Rescue from a ladder, rescue from an aerial lift, a scissor lift, anything that you can do that won't put the rescuers at risk. And so the challenges are, what if he's so high that you don't have an extension ladder that will reach him, or you don't have an aerial lift or a scissor lift on site? So there's all kinds of equipment out there. There's a thing called the Gotcha kit. There's the First Man Up kit. DBI Sala and Guardian and Miller, all the fall protection companies make rescue kits, but honestly, I don't see them on sites very often. And so that is something to think about. If your worker falls and you're so high that even a fire truck ladder wouldn't be able to reach him, you have to have some kind of a plan B. Most of the members with RCAW, I think, are on projects where it would be realistic to think that a fire truck ladder would be able to reach a fallen worker. But if not, if you ever are in that situation, you do have to have a plan B. I reached out to the technical services department at Labor and Industries yesterday to try to get some clarification on whether a fallen worker is required to be evaluated medically or not. I honestly could not find it on the Washington Administrative Codes or the L&I website. But what I did find is this information from the Department of OSHA. And we all know we fall under Labor and Industries, so we are a state-ran organization, Labor and Industries, but we have to meet or exceed the Code of Federal Regulations, which are the OSHA codes. And so what I have here, and this is the handout that Tracy will share with the group, I emailed this to her, is it's basically a newsletter about suspension trauma or orthostatic intolerance. So this is the reason that self-rescue is so important. And this probably isn't news to anybody. If a worker is suspended from a harness, there's a potential issue of orthostatic intolerance, which is basically what can occur if a worker is suspended for too long. Obviously, there's other potential injury. There's potential back injury, internal injury, other external injuries. But this issue of orthostatic intolerance is why self-rescue is so important. And so what I ended up telling the general contractor when the roofer fell is that I highly recommended that they either call 911 or, if they felt comfortable with it, have the roofing company transport the fallen worker. And that's what they ended up doing. They had a crew member on the roofing crew, took the individual to the nearest clinic and had him checked out. The good news is he was fine. They didn't find anything physically wrong with the worker, and they released him back to his job and said that there was no necessary follow-up. And the only thing that they recommended is if some sort of symptoms or conditions, what am I trying to say here? If conditions did show up, then they recommended follow-up. That's basically it. And so it was kind of a good ending, but again, the confusion when the emergency happened was the issue. The roofer had an activity-specific fall protection plan. They had a rescue plan in place. They knew they had an extension ladder that was tall enough to rescue. And so that was the good news. I'm going to follow up with Tracy. If I hear back from L&I and the technical services, I will follow up with Tracy with any advice that the consultants give me over at L&I, because again, I'm not sure if it's an actual rule that a fallen worker has to be evaluated. I know it's highly recommended. And so you could just put it in your company policy that if a fallen worker is suffering from suspension trauma, they are medically evaluated. That's my recommendation, regardless of whether the state or the law requires it. I would have it be company policy. It just makes good sense, guys. And so I would write that up in a fall protection plan, that part of your rescue plan is to self-rescue, get the gotcha kit or another rescue kit if you don't have the means to rescue via extension ladder or aerial lift. And then if you can self-rescue, depending on the situation, if first aid is required, or if the fallen worker is unconscious, I do know there is a code that you absolutely have to call 911 and have the individual evaluated. That's if they're unconscious. And then obviously it's common sense that you would do that, but that is an actual rule. And you would call 911, you would not transport. But if they're conscious and they feel good and they don't notice any signs or symptoms of injury and you self-rescue, my recommendation is you do two things. One of two things, either call 911 or transport to the nearest medical facility like this company did and have the worker medically evaluated, because you just never know what might be going on internally, emotionally, mentally, or externally. And so I would write that in as company policy. So if you look at this handout here, you can see here that orthostatic intolerance may be defined as the development of symptoms such as a lightheadedness, palpitations, tremulousness. Oh boy, that's a tough word. Poor concentration, fatigue, nausea, dizziness, headache, sweating, weakness, and occasionally fainting during upright standing. So while in a sedentary position, blood can accumulate in the veins, which is commonly called venous pooling, and cause orthostatic intolerance. It also can occur when an individual moves suddenly after being sedentary for a long time. For example, a person may experience orthostatic intolerance when they stand up quickly after sitting still for a long time. And so there's all kinds of YouTube videos out there, guys, that you can watch. If you go on YouTube and you search Rescue the Fallen Worker, a lot of videos will come up from, I found some from Oregon OSHA, from Guardian and Miller and DBI Sala, and they will, almost all of them say, once you rescue a fallen worker, don't take the harness off, move them as little as possible, have them lean up against another worker or up against a wall, and just, grab their legs and bend their legs towards themselves and sit either like in an Indian style or, just comfortably with their legs bent and their arms wrapped around their legs. And so that will help comfort the fallen worker, especially if they are experiencing some emotions or, they're in a little bit of shock possibly. That's another reason for having them evaluated, is they could be in shock. And have them sit like that for about 10 minutes. And then once they're comfortable, again, like I said, either call 911 or transport. And so the other thing that I do know that all manufacturers of fall protection equipment require that any equipment that has been impact loaded, in other words, the full body harness, the lanyard, the rope grab, the yo-yo or retractable, whatever the connector is, anything that has been impact loaded due to a fall must be removed from service. And I also know that some companies, and I can't speak for which ones, but some companies, if you write a letter and mail the harness or the connector back to the manufacturer, they will replace the equipment for free. I've never actually had somebody do that, but I've been told that that is an option. But everything has to be removed from service, including the anchor point. If the anchor point is a permanent anchor point, it is supposed to be recertified. And so you would reach out to the manufacturer and see if they can do another load test or a drop test and recertify the permanent anchor. If it's not a permanent anchor and it's a temporary anchor, just remove it from service. And so, again, like I said, this was not a wake-up call. We've been talking about, rescue plans. It's one of the bulleted items that's required on an activity-specific fall protection plan. But it's that issue of, do they need to be medically evaluated? Do you have to call 911? Can you transport? And the only answer I have, folks, is it's sort of dependent on the scenario. Again, I can't stress enough that I highly recommend it just be company policy that the individual is, seen by either an emergency room or a, neighborhood medical clinic or some kind of medical evaluation to make sure that there's no internal or external injury. The other thing that came up is, do you have to notify Labor and Industries? Do you have to call the 1-800-4BE-SAFE or the 1-800 hotline that's required for reporting hospitalizations, fatalities, amputations, loss of eye? No, you do not. It is not required to report this to Labor and Industries unless the individual obviously is if it's a fatality or if it's a hospitalization or if it results in amputation or loss of eye, then yes. But if it's a fallen worker in this situation where everything's fine, he's evaluated by a medical team, he's released back to his job, his regular job, then there's no follow-up, you do not have to report that. Even if there was slight injury and he was sent home for the day and he couldn't return to work, if he wasn't hospitalized, you do not have to report it. It might become a recordable injury on your OSHA 300 log if he if he misses any work or there's any follow-up care that's required, but it does not have to be reported to Labor and Industries. And so I had a YouTube video that I wanted to show you guys, and I'm hoping I can make this work. Bear with me because I'm kind of technically challenged, but I think I can. Whoops, let's do this. Here we go. Should come right up. Here's the one on rescue the fallen worker from a roof. Here, whoops. Here we go. So this is Oregon OSHA.
So with fall protection, you have to have a rescue plan. Our company does have a rescue plan. First and foremost, somebody falls off the roof, somebody's calling 911. The crew then works to get a ladder, to get a lift, whatever we need to do to get over to the person that has fallen, to be able to help them get picked up and get that pressure off their body. So then we can get them disconnected and get them down to the ground, and medical personnel can check them out and make sure they're okay. So if we do have a situation where one of the workers falls off the roof, one of the first things that's going to happen is someone's going to call 911 while the rest of the crew is getting a ladder, getting the equipment needed to help that person. First thing is to assess the situation, make sure that the person is there, that they're not unconscious or something like that. But the crew is going to work together to call 911 to get rescue equipment in place, and then also to notify our office as well that we've had a situation, and we can get our management team out there as soon as possible. And rescue plans have to be modified depending on the situation of the roof that you're working on, whether you're just on a single-story residential home or if you're on a 4-story commercial complex. Typically, those situations are going to be so different. You're going to have different equipment at each one. That would facilitate being able to perform a rescue if needed.
Okay, so that's just a good, quick little video whoops. Whoops. See what happened here. Sorry, guys. Here we go. There it is. All right, so back to that bulletin. So this is the handout that Tracy has, but that's just a quick video that, talks about having a company plan, the requirements for a rescue plan, And again, I'm going to follow up with Tracy when I hear back from technical services. But honestly, guys, I can't stress enough that a fallen worker should be medically evaluated for any potential injury, whether it's required or not. That's my recommendation. The other thing that I want to talk about is be really careful about not putting rescuers at risk. Years ago, I was involved in a fatality investigation where they used a trash box attached to a forklift to try to rescue a fallen worker. And they put another crew member in the trash box, raised the member up to the fallen worker, lowered the fallen worker into the trash box, and everything was great. They got the fallen worker into the trash box. He was healthy, no issues. And when they started to retract the forklift, the other roofer stepped off center of the trash box, which was not connected to the forks, and he caused the trash box to tip over, and they both fell out, and it was a double fatality as a result of that attempted rescue. That was probably one of the worst investigations I've ever been involved in, and it wasn't even in Washington State. And so I can't stress enough that, with all the good intentions, the last thing we want to do is potentially put both the fallen worker and the rescuers at risk. And so you can't go outside of, what's allowed as far as, for rescue. As creative as we want to get, it could bring harm to other workers. And so be careful about that. And so, like I said, I'm going to follow up with technical services and try to get a little bit more information. I wanted to show you real quick what the Washington Administrative Code says. And this is all it says. And hopefully, there we go. It says if you don't know this, the fall prevention codes are no longer in the 296155 construction codes. They have been moved out of the construction codes as of October of 2020 and moved into the 800 codes. When Erin did her fall protection trainings earlier in the year, she referenced the new unified fall protection codes. The good news is the new codes have basically adopted the construction codes, so not much has changed, for us in the construction industry. Bad news is if you worked in general industry or fixed industry, the rules got much more stringent for those folks. So they basically have to follow the construction rules now. So what it says in Washington Administrative Code 296-880-10005, when personal fall arrest systems are used, the employer must assure that employees can be promptly rescued or can rescue themselves should a fall occur. The availability of rescue personnel, ladders, or other rescue equipment should be evaluated. In some situations, equipment which allows employees to rescue themselves after the fall has been arrested may be desirable, such as devices which have descent capability. The employer must plan for and provide prompt rescue of employees in the event of a fall, or must assure the self-rescue capability of employees. That's all I could find, guys. There might be more out there, but when I did a search, that's what I came up with. So like I mentioned, I will follow up with technical services and see if I can't get more information. I do know that there has been some training requirements that have changed a little bit in the new code. And so we can do like a generic fall protection training, and we can do generic ladder training. But in addition to that, your competent person needs to be doing very activity specific or site specific training. In other words, if their personal fall arrest system changes, if they go from a rope grab to a retractable or to a lanyard, that would need to be reviewed with the individual. They wouldn't need a whole full-blown fall protection training, but they would need site-specific training on the different type of connector, or if their tasks change, or if they go from a roof to working off of scaffold, or, whatever the case may be. And so make sure that in addition to a full-blown, 4 or 8 hour class on fall protection training, you're also documenting that you're reviewing your site-specific fall protection plan with the crew and having them sign off on it. So that is still required. And then the other question I get quite a bit is, do you have to post your fall protection plan? No. They do not require that it be posted. So much is done electronically now, guys. So long as it's available upon request and it's been signed by everybody that's working at heights of 10 feet or more on the project, you should be fine. So it can be available electronically. It can be in a 3-ring binder somewhere in a job trailer. But if a Labor and Industries compliance officer comes on site and requests the fall protection plan, it should be, you should be able to bring it up. It should be reviewed and signed and submitted to the department. So that was another question that came up last week when we were doing the investigation. Okay, so that's about all I have. It's about 11:30. I'm going to cut this short, and let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. I don't know if anybody has any questions or not. If you do, can you put them in the chat box right now? I did put in the chat box a link to a YouTube video that demonstrates the gotcha kit. So I thought that might be helpful for someone who wasn't sure what that was or how that worked.
Tracy, let me interrupt you real quick. Did you say the gotcha kit?
Yeah.
So real quick, I have had experience with that on 2 different occasions now, where it has been the rescue plan for high rises in downtown Seattle. It is an excellent system, but the issue is you have to have some sort of an anchor point to attach the gotcha kit. So it's GOTCHA kit. But it's a slick system if it works for the situation. It might be a little bit challenging for a roofing situation, but on a high rise where there's options for anchor points, it's a great system. They have also a like a folding ladder kit as part of the gotcha products as well that might be more realistic for a roofing industry. So, but yeah, those are some great options. Thank you for that, Tracy.
What would you suggest would be the best type of situation for a residential roofer?
Well, honestly, probably making sure you have an extension ladder that's tall enough to reach the guys, or some sort of an aerial lift. I really think that is the ideal, most realistic self-rescue system. But if that's, they also have a kit called the First Man Up, but that's more for when you're trying to get to the anchor point that's already been installed for the first, at the beginning of the day, or, after lunch or something. But I think that the First Man Up system also can be used as some sort of a rescue system as well, or there's another product that's related to that. But honestly, Tracy, I just feel like an extension ladder. And, even if the fallen worker is is in shock or is emotionally distressed and they're not comfortable climbing down the ladder, they're like, oh man, I'll rest on the ladder, but there's no way I'm going to untie and climb down. That's okay, because at least you can get them resting on the ladder, and they reduce that suspension trauma and that potential for orthostatic intolerance, because it will stop that, the leg straps from the, the blood pooling up. So that's always an option. They also have suspension trauma straps, which I think almost everybody is aware of these days. DBI Sala makes them, Miller, Guardian, everybody has them. They're typically very universal. And so my recommendation is that every harness out there has these suspension trauma straps attached to it, so that if the fallen worker is able to and they're conscious, they can hook the suspension straps, step into them, and again relieve that suspension trauma, temporarily until they're rescued. So I recommend that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's really good information. I will be getting out the handout that Jennifer was using today to all of our participants. And you can always refer back to this Lunch and Learn and the Lunch and Learn that she did on competent person, or the fall protection and fall, what's the word I'm looking for? Fall restraints and everything that we've done before. We have those all on our YouTube channel, and they will always be there for you to refer back to. As a member, you can access any of that also through the Members Clubhouse, where we also have a ton of other safety information there for you, as well as a lot of other stuff. So our next Lunch and Learn is on the 30th with Trent Cotney from Cotney Attorneys and Consultants. And he's also going to be talking about some really important changes from OSHA and how that could affect your business. So we'd invite you to join us then. And then Jennifer will be back again in April with us. And we also have our biannual in April. And we also have our sporting clay competition coming up at the end of April. So RCAW has a lot going on and a lot of information for you. And I want to thank Jennifer for always being with us every month and giving us the most updated safety information. And if you guys need any safety training, CPR, competent person, etc., and so on, go to the website, go to the Members Clubhouse. You can find all of the course descriptions that are offered by Safety Matters with pricing special to our RCAW membership, and you can schedule directly with Safety Matters. So with that said, is there anything else, Jennifer?
Nope. Just be safe out there, guys.
Yes, absolutely. Be safe and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.